Let's have a conversation this morning with the former, as you have seen right there in the opening slide, Chief Technical Advisor to the Imo State Governor, as well as a Public Affairs Analyst, Jerry Chukwueke. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
You know, the political scene is quite interesting again. This is 2025, and all we hear is that this is all, going towards 2027. Question is, isn't it too early? It seems like governance is going to take the back seat very, very quickly.
Well, I hope not, because I think it's important that, strategically speaking, Nigeria and our democracy at this stage must enjoy a vibrant opposition, because it helps keep the government's feet to the fire and ensure that there are alternative viewpoints and approaches to governance. What we have here, unfortunately, in my view, is a leadership deficit on the part of the opposition parties, particularly the main opposition party. The crisis, in my view, that is hurting our democracy appears to be that they are more focused on ambition rather than vision. So long as they're struggling with ambition, who the presidential candidate will be, zoning, who, for example, is a secretary of their party, rather than what the conversation should be. What are your viewpoints? What's the vision for Nigeria? What do you engage with Nigerians about to show your readiness for leadership? That's the challenge. So when people talk about the surge to the APC, I sit back, and it's not very difficult to decipher, in my view. It is because of the sort of leadership and vision that we see going on, and it's creating a loss of confidence in the leadership of the other parties. It's not too late for them to make that adjustment, meaning the opposition, because we need them to get up and do the business of the Nigerian people by providing alternative ideas.
Yeah, it would seem like the opposition was weak even before the 2023 general elections, because we knew, of course, that there was a lot of disharmony within the PDP, the main opposition party, as you said, and even the Labour Party, and all of the ramping up that happened. It would seem like it was maybe a little too late, in the day before the general elections. And of course, I think all of that is already, playing out. The coalition that tried to usher in a Labour Party governance at the time. Now, the problem of opposition has been on in Nigeria since 2015. Now, what do you think is responsible for that? It would seem like the build-up to the 2015 elections saw the death, so to speak, of virile opposition in our polity.
So, life, in my view, is about learning and unlearning. So you have to ask yourself, what has the opposition learned in the last several years? Because they're still grappling with those issues today. It is disappointing for the Nigerian people, because we really need constructive, strategic conversations about alternative views and what can be done differently in the interest of Nigerians. For example, I'm sure Mr. President is losing hours of sleep at night, wondering what to do next about power supply, about privatization of the refineries. There's no conversation from the opposition about it. Look what he just came up with, the issue of forest guards. He's now talking about ranching, because you need to have agricultural value chain, and investors like people from Brazil willing to invest over $2 billion in Nigeria. But they need feedstock. They need meat and cattle in an organized, value-driven chain strategy. And I can go on and on. The ramping up of local crude production, paying off the IMF, increasing and bettering our credit rating, and ensuring that borrowed monies are going into productive channels as opposed to consumption. We can go on and on. This is the leadership and the vision we're talking about.
But that's not to say insecurity has abated.
Yeah, so
that's not to say that the prices of foodstuff have also kind of eased out. And that's not to say that the foreign exchange is comfortable for the business.
Hey, but look where we were several years ago. Look where we are. We're making the improvements. Let me make the point.
The exchange rate was not this high.
No, come on.
It's never been this high.
But you know what it was, because it was artificial. And we know there were different rates for different categories of customers.
It's even that seems to be coming up again.
Well, I'm not sure, because this president, from what I know...
What I also know is that, there are conversations to give special considerations for BTA and some other, rates and considerations like that.
Yes, but whatever those tweakings may be, and we have to see them evolve, cannot be the rascality that we saw years ago, and that put us in a lot of trouble. Because any which way you look at it, the exchange rate has been fairly stable between 1.45, 1,450, and 1,600 naira per dollar in at least nearly 1 year. But let's go further, because this is the point I'm making. I think clearly that vision-driven approach to governance must be the key. I like and this is my view, I think that when you go away from the old argument of state police, which is still on the table, and they're looking to get the right timing, but the introduction of forest guards, where the federal government and the National Security Advisor's Office takes charge in collaboration with the states to bring an average of 3,500 young men and women in each state, trained, equipped, to man the forests and ensure that we manage security better. It's clearly a new idea. We need solution providers. And that's what the opposition is not doing. They've got to start to focus on being solution providers as opposed to people who are focused on ambition. That's the challenge in my view.
But right now, as you said, there are a number of, people will have issues with one or two things that you said, because they would raise the issue with you that the issue of forest guards is not a new thing in the country. However, but the issue of the defection and coalition, how comfortable, how safe, how sane is that for us? There are many people, many arguments, people who have come out to say, look, every election cycle, this happens. And we have seen that over time, particularly since 2015. In the build-up to the 2015 elections, we saw a lot of mass defections from the leading opposition party, as you said it, into the APC. And of course, they shipped out eventually. And then even in this election, the election of 2023, we saw the same thing, all kinds of coalitions, all kinds of permutations, and then we see, what we have seen. And another build-up is happening now. Why does this happen? Is it because there are no political ideologies, or, as you said, it's just my interest and my interest only?
Well, that's a good chunk of it right there. Because when you go further, look at what the PDP of the Southeast was saying yesterday. That the Southeast caucus of the PDP is prepared to break away from the party and join some coalition unless they have their candidate as the national secretary. That party is not even able to resolve that issue. Can you imagine? Because of the same token, they're talking about where they're zoning what to, who the candidate will be, and who becomes the president. Those issues can come, but get Nigerians talking about your vision. What are you going to do differently? How will those impact the lives of Nigerians better? That's where Mr. President Bola Tinubu is leading, without a doubt. Because if you are talking about change for the sake of it, it's a shallow argument. They have to come with a superior argument, and it doesn't exist right now. Clearly so. And so it appears that the train has left the station, in my view. And all on board. And if you miss it here, you better catch up with it, the next train station. But that train's destination is the re-election of Mr. President. Having said that, my view is it's not too late for the opposition to push back with ideas. We need vision from the opposition. What would you do differently? That's what Nigerians are very particularly interested in having, that conversation.
But another thing that's troubled me personally about this is the legacies that the footprints that the political class is leaving, particularly for the young people. If the only thing people can see is self-interest at play all the time, then it speaks to whether or not people are going to demonstrate interest or confidence in the political class. If the only thing that people are doing is, look, junketing from one party to the other, a good number of politicians, have moved from one party to the other over the years, and people have seen all these things. And to a large extent, sometimes they even try to perpetuate themselves or their legacies through, their children and offsprings and all of that. So one wonders exactly what are we telling the next generation?
And that's a great point. And I think that story is evolving. There are many subnational leaders who are focused on the job at hand, in my view. And they're pushing hard, taking full advantage of some of the courageous policy decisions because they have more money from FAC, focusing on small businesses, infrastructure, empowering young people, focusing on investing in technology to better manage security, and in ways and means that our young people can see disciplined leadership. That's important. And you also give Mr. President for the credit for this. You see how he continues to play, identifying, associating with subnational leaders who are performing across party line. If you watch his movement and how he's out there working together and encouraging others to come along.
Some would argue,
so I think that's important.
Some would argue and tell you that all of that is political permutation, even on the part of the president.
Well, guess what? Let's look at what's on the ground. Would it not be fair to say, for example, that in the southeast, just like in Kano and the work going on in Kaduna State or in Cross River, look at Enugu State, look at my state, look at what's going on in Abia State, even for that matter, Anambra State. Look at what's going on even in Lagos. We have challenges. But Lagos is almost on the verge of being able to run the system without FAC allocation. Just like what's happening in the Federal Capital Territory. Would you have any doubt about the job former Governor Wike is doing in the Federal Capital Territory? Look at even the IGR. So there is progress. Leadership is evolving in a way that shows that the true leaders with commitment to the business of their people are beginning to emerge. We need more and more. And that's why I favor as well people with private sector experience, because it brings a certain discipline to it, because you're now taking the business of trying to turn ₦1 million into 100 million, but now you're turning ₦1 million to 100 million for the common good. And that's a discipline in itself.
Okay. I believe that my colleague in Abuja, Mokwe, also has questions for you.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Mokwe.
Indeed, Ayo, thank you very much. Well, let me come to you, Mr. Chukwueke, and ask you about what you made of the meeting yesterday between or from PDP senators. Senators in the PDP had a meeting yesterday where they, said that their party is not in shambles and that they are looking forward, to having more members. They think that they are strong enough to be able to move forward and that they are not fazed by the movement of people from their party to other political parties, particularly the APC. What are your thoughts on that particular meeting? Do you think it's coming too late in the day, or do you think you should have done it much earlier?
Well, thank you, Mokwe. My view is that it's a good development, but we need to go beyond talking and the rhetorics to really what vision they're putting forward. Nigerians are really anxious to hear the conversation about alternative viewpoints to policy, what they intend to achieve as a viable opposition, and preparedness to lead. What would they do differently that will better impact the lives of the Nigerian people? Those are the real issues. And so, because we've heard this over and over again, they've come together. They've agreed on who the party chairman is. The Southeast says. I mean, things are happening. I listened carefully to Mr. President a few days ago when he was in Anambra State, talking about now dealing with the marginalization of the Southeast to bring the gas power lines in terms of network of natural gas into the Southeast to empower economic development, to bring standard rail gauge into the Southeast to empower the economy and the logistics and the logistical challenge. We want to hear ideas from the opposition. And quite frankly, I think they're doing Nigerians a disservice by this continuous pursuit of ambition rather than vision. And that remains my argument.
I don't also know what you made of the encounter that presidential candidate of the Labour Party, former governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, had with the president in Rome. And then when he got back from that particular trip, he also, he visited a school, and he clarified to a lot of people that, he's not enemies with the president. What he is enemies of or with is corruption. What he's enemies with is children out of school, essentially listing most of the ills that he stands against. Do you think that that is clear enough to the people in terms of a vision and what precisely he stands for as a Nigerian politician?
Well, I know former Governor Peter Obi very well. He's a friend of mine and a gentleman for that matter, and God-fearing. I know those things of him. Mr. President is a president of Nigeria and deserves his due respect. And that's what we saw play out in Rome. Having said that, what former Governor Peter Obi and Labour candidate for president in the last election was talking about were quite generic. These are challenges that have bedeviled Nigeria for years: out of school children, level of poverty, infrastructural decay, corruption. But look, we were just reading yesterday about a clear and improved approach to fighting corruption by the EFCC. The housing project they just handed over, looking to, in every opportunity, to fight corruption and to bring those assets back into the common good. So I think that the point he was making are things that we all as Nigerians are concerned about. But they didn't start with Mr. President. I think they're actually improving under his leadership. And that's my understanding of what he was talking about.
Are they really improving? I think that's the question a lot of Nigerians will ask. In this season, for a lot of people, especially in the last 2 years, looking at the removal of fuel subsidy, they would have loved to see a bit more transparency. I think even in the World Bank report released recently, the review that was done with the ministers of finance and a number of other ministers who were in attendance there, there were a number of issues raised by the World Bank. Why did it say that, yes, on the whole, they are saying certain macroeconomic improvements? They didn't mince words on the fact that they're yet to see where the savings that were supposed to have accrued from the removal of subsidy, where it is accrued to. Do you think that there's been sufficient explanation and sufficient transparency shown by the Nigerian government in terms of how these funds are being expended?
Well, that's again a good point. If you look at the net, one of the key value derivatives of the removal of fuel subsidy is the fact that allocation to subnationals is more than tripled. The subnational leadership has got more work to do. And many of those governors are doing well, but more needs to be done. They have more money now at their disposal to focus on jobs creation, partnering with the private sector, creating, in conjunction with the private sector, power supply. Big deal for Nigeria. How do we get more power so small and mid-sized businesses can operate? How do we get some grants and soft loans to small businesses? How do we get more money flowing in local governments for small contractors and suppliers so they too stay busy? All of these are opportunities created by the funds that are now creable through FAC to the subnationals. And we need more work done in that regard, because that's part of how we fight insecurity and create happiness and stability for Nigerian people. The opportunity is there. We just need more work, even at the subnational level.
Well, there are so many other issues to raise with you, particularly in the area of governance, because we've mostly spoken about the federal government, but not quite about the subnationals themselves, who have a lot of accountability to do for Nigerians. And now we have to thank you so much for your time for coming here with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jerry Chukwueke is a former Chief Technical Advisor to the Imo State Governor, as well as a public affairs analyst. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm very happy to have been here.
Okay.
Thank you.